Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we're going to cover a couple interesting topics. Later on, we're going to talk about the white hot MJ12 report. That's something I've never talked about here on the podcast before. It's a leaked document that was leaked actually in the mid-1990s to Tim Cooper. As to whether it's real or not, nobody really can say. A lot of people think it is real. There are a lot of people in the UFO community, people like Ryan Wood, as well as his father, Robert Wood, who investigated this, who did a lot of research on this, and they came to the conclusion that it's highly likely that it is an actual real document. We're going to talk about that later on. I think it's very interesting. There's a lot of stuff in there that really is gives you food for thought. But the first thing I want to talk about is this Wikipedia and Wikipedia, that new organization that Rob Heatherly of Military Witnesses to UAP has been talking about the last couple of months. There's this organization, Guerilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. It's basically well over 100 people, debunkers who are basically controlling some of the pages on Wikipedia. With regard to UFOs and extraterrestrials and people who are related to, who study this, like UFO investigators, and they're controlling the narrative on a lot of these pages. Well, over the weekend, I was doing some research, and I was wanted to find out some more information on Edward Ruppelt's 1956 book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects. It was Ruppelt was the first director of Project Blue Book. He was a captain in the United States Air Force, and after he retired, he went to work for Northrop Aircraft Company, and he also published his book in 1956. And it's a very interesting book, and especially made a lot of waves at the time. And I was doing some research on it, and when I looked at it on the Wikipedia page, and I noticed that for one thing, there was some false information on the Wikipedia page, and also they made the MJ12 documents. They stated outright that they were clearly a hoax or hoaxed or bogus, and really there's no absolute end-all evidence that ever showed that these documents were hoaxed or bogus. I mean, outside of some comments from a couple of Air Force officials, a disinformation agent, for instance, named Richard Weaver, that's about it. I mean, he never really offered any evidence to show that these are bogus. Nobody really has, actually, to tell you the truth. Some of them I do believe are bogus, but some of them I think are real. But I guess we're probably not ever going to know for sure. But the bottom line is the way this Wikipedia page on the report on unidentified flying objects was set up, it made it sound like that these things were phony. And of course, I didn't like that at all, so I decided to go in and make some changes to that page myself. And I want to tell you how everything has gone down, at least to this point. On Sunday, I went in there. I'm going to pull this up here now so you can see what I'm doing. This is the Wikipedia page. I used the moniker Shark Fisherman. That's the name I use on Wikipedia. I just created this account just recently, I guess late last year. Shark Fisherman, actually, that's named after Quint, the character in the movie Jaws, played by Robert Schatz, one of my favorite characters, of course. I think probably anybody who likes movies would agree with that. One of the most colorful movie characters of all time. But anyway, so I went in there and there were some revisions that I made. Now, if you go to this Wikipedia page, you could go to the main page. If you were to go there without checking out the history or anything or how it was edited in the past, you'll see this article here on about this book that was published in 1956 by Edward Ruppelt. Now, I went and made some changes on Sunday. I made one change on Sunday, and we're gonna go over that, the first change I made, and how I did receive a response actually from, and somebody went in there and made other additional changes after I made my change, and the person who made the changes is apparently someone from this Guerilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. Because I've seen this name pop up before on some of these other Wikipedia pages. Anyway, this was the first change I made, was on February 18th at 20:45 hours. And this is, you could actually, the way Wikipedia is set up, you could see all the edits that were made and what it looked like before, what it looks like now. So this was the change that I made. The original paragraph stated this in one section of this of this page. It stated the Twining memo. They're talking about the Twining memo of 1947, where General Nathan Twining stated that the UFOs are something that's real and they're not fictitious or visionary. And it says here, the Twining memo should not be confused with the hoaxed Cutler Twining memo dated July 14th, 1954, included as part of the bogus Majestic 12 documents in 1985. Now, the Cutler Twining memo was actually something, it was just a little brief message that was sent to General Twining from Robert Cutler in 1954 that just asked him to attend this meeting of the MJ-12. Now, a lot of people in the UFO world, they don't want to believe this because they don't. I mean, if MJ-12 exists, that completely collapses their entire theory that there's nothing to any of this. So they for decades now, they've been saying that it's been that was hoaxed, even though it was found at the National Archives. But regardless, there's no positive evidence that it was hoaxed. I mean, it says here that this paragraph just states out plainly that it's not to be confused with the hoaxed Cutler Twining memo, as included as part of the bogus Majestic 12 documents. Like, as that's a fact, it was written as if that's a fact. But it's not a fact. So I went in there and I changed that. I wrote, the Twining memo should not be confused with the Cutler Twining memo dated July 14, 1954, included as part of the alleged Majestic 12 documents in 1985. So what I did there was I removed the word hoaxed and completely, and I also changed the word bogus to alleged. And then I made a statement as to why I did this, and I actually wrote, you can see here, it says, my comment on this, I said, there is no definitive proof that the Cutler Twining memo is a hoax or that the MJ-12 briefing memo is a hoax. So within about 5 or 6 hours, somebody named Fioffer, which I've seen this name before, apparently this is someone who is with Guerilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. This person had to chime in, he or she, I don't know who this person is. And they made a change. They actually added something to the end of this to this paragraph, to this section rather, and this was the addition. It says the FBI declared those documents to be completely bogus, and many ufologists consider them to be an elaborate hoax. Okay, so they wanted to make it clear that even though all over the internet they're talking about how these documents could be hoaxed or bogus, they had to add that in. And his comment was, or her comment, I don't know if it's a he or a she, says, added plus statement and source of widespread belief MJ-12 is bogus/hoax, but still leaving the door open and not actually declaring it such. Okay, that was fine. But I did go back and I did make another change to that after Fioffer made that change. And we're going to go check that out now. And this was on Monday, yesterday. So I went back in, and I actually changed where he had, and he wrote, or she, that, and many ufologists consider them to be an elaborate hoax. I changed it to, and some ufologists consider them to be an elaborate hoax. And then I commented, I said, I changed the word many to some. We know there are some who think the documents are hoax, but stating many implies a lot. No polling exists that informs us the percentage of ufologists who believe the documents are hoaxed. Now, up to this point, no one has changed anything on this. Geoffer has not returned and made any additional changes or argued with me about my change from many to some. But I didn't stop there. I actually kept on going. And the next one I did, I'm going to show you. Let's go to the next change that I made. Now there was a false statement that was in here. In the original page, it was saying no copy of this document, or this was they were talking about the estimate of the situation. Now, of course, the estimate of the situation is something that I did talk about before in this podcast, and a lot of people in the ufology talk about it. Basically, what that was, in 1948, Project Sign, which was the first group to investigate UFOs for the Air Force. They came up with, the people that were part of this Project Sign. They determined that the objects are interplanetary, and they provided this estimate of the situation report to General Hoyt Vandenberg Vandenberg said, no, we're not going to say it's interplanetary, that this is extraterrestrial. You got to come up with something better. Then soon after, Project Sign was dismantled, and it was transformed into Project Grudge. A lot of the people who came to that conclusion were reassigned to the conclusion that the UFOs are interplanetary in nature. They were reassigned, but no copy of the document ever has been brought forth. But anyway, in the original Wikipedia section on the estimate of the situation in this for this page, it stated, no copy of this document or any other corroboration of Ruppelt's claim has been produced. So that was false. That's false information. That was, I don't know how that got in there, but that's not true. So I changed it. I actually cited Richard Dolan's UFOs and a National Security State, the first volume, as the evidence that statement is false. So I changed it to, no copy of this document has been produced, but Ruppelt's assertion that it existed was corroborated by Air Force Major Dewey Fournette, quote, who prepared an affidavit in the late 1950s that confirmed the document's existence. And then, of course, I had this. After that, I inserted this citation from Dolan's book on that. And there was other proof to this, too, with regard to that. Actually, Jerome Clark, an investigator, actually talked about this. It says here, this is from Military History Fandom page here that I was looking at. It says, Ruppelt's 1956 book, which first publicly disclosed the estimate, was cleared by the Air Force, Clark writes, that as late as 1960. Air Force officials denied that the estimate was real, despite the fact that censors had approved Ruppelt's book a few years before. According to Clark, the United States Air Force later formally admitted the estimate was real, but Clark's bibliography does not make clear what statement or document confirmed the estimate's reality. But anyway, it wasn't just Richard Dolan, it was also Clark. So that's another interesting change. It's interesting that the information presented initially on that Wikipedia page had a false statement in there. That's not surprising considering this Guerilla Skeptics organization. And then I actually went in and I removed another, there was something else that I removed in there. I'll show you what that was. In the original page, it stated, and popular mechanics called the report probably more mythological than real. So I didn't like that, and I was like, well, why does popular mechanics is? We're having a comment here from popular mechanics saying that the estimate of the situation was probably more mythological than factual. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. So I actually totally removed that comment completely because it doesn't add anything to it, and it's just someone's opinion. It's like basically knocking on someone's doors up the street and saying, "Hey, what do you think about the estimate of the situation?" Well, it's I think it's probably mythological, like the chimera. So I just took it out completely, and I put in as my the reason for it. I wrote, I removed the popular mechanics comment because it is merely an opinion that lacks merit. So, yes, it is. It is an opinion that lacks merit. So, and that's some of the changes I made. Now, so far, none of these guerrilla skeptics have come back to make any additional changes. But I did find it very interesting that, some mere just hours after I made that first change on Sunday, G. Offer comes in there to make sure, hey, we got to put in those bogus and hoax and stuff. Make sure we put in that kind of stuff. Right? And for all I know, they're going to return here and do some more, right, at some point. I just wanted to point it out, though, because that it was they moved in quickly. Like when I made that initial change, right, they moved in quickly, like vultures, right, to put in their 2 cents again. So that's how it works on here, folks. So you could make some changes on here, but you don't know. They could come in and do some more changes. You could be doing this for the rest of your life, trying to make these articles on Wikipedia fair and balanced. You could try to do that for your whole life, but you're probably going to be constantly have to deal with these debunkers who don't like the reality of the extraterrestrial presence here and want to pretend that it's not real and say that all these leaked documents over the years are they'll state it as factual, as fact. Oh, it's bogus, it's hoaxed. When you can't say that. You just can't do it. You could say it might be hoaxed. A lot of us think it's hoaxed or that it's bogus, but that's fine. But you can't say that as fact because you don't have any proof to back it up. In fact, like I talked about recently, a lot of the Majestic 12 documents, I think that they are real, and there's the evidence points more to their being real than being fake in a lot of cases. So you can't just state as fact that that's the situation, that it's bogus or hoax. You gotta give it more context than that. But that's not what this group is doing. And this is only one page. We're talking here. This is one grain of sand we're talking about. I mean, Wikipedia has a lot of different pages that discusses UFOs and extraterrestrials. And if you look at a lot of them, you realize, wow, these are a mess. They're not. There's a lot of facts that are kept out. There's a lot of bogus facts that are thrown in. A lot of comments from debunkers. There's a lot of debunker comments in these articles. It's really sad. But I just wanted to see what would happen by making a change, and pretty quickly, within hours, when I made that initial change, one of them swooped in like a vulture to make sure. What's this guy doing? And he had to add in that extra sentence there, right, so, to make sure that everyone knows that everyone thinks it's bogus and a hoax, right? Not everyone. And actually, there's probably a lot more changes that should be made to just this page alone that I'm talking about. This was a page that was devoted to Edward Ruppelt's 1956 book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects. So, yeah. Okay, now moving on, I want to talk about the White Hot document. Now, let's see here. Let me pull it up here. Yes. Now I'm on a website, majesticdocuments.com. I'll leave the links for all of this stuff so you can check it out. And this was very interesting. They talk about Nathan Twining's White Hot Report mission assessment of recovered lenticular aerodyne objects. And apparently this document was written in September 19th, 1947, and it was sent to President Harry Truman. Now, I'm going to go to the... let's see here. This is from if you look at the original Majestic 12 documents, of course, the original Majestic 12 documents that were leaked in the early to mid 80s, 1984, to some UFO researchers, they included a briefing document that was prepared in 1952 for incoming President Dwight Eisenhower. To explain, to give them, basically to provide an appraisal of the situation with regard to the recovered craft at Roswell and what they've learned and what the situation is with regard to UFOs and extraterrestrials at that point in time. And it talks about how much it actually included, as in that briefing document, a letter from that was signed by Harry Truman on September 24th, 1947, which only would have been a mere 5 days after this White Hot document was prepared for Truman. And this was when Truman directed then Secretary of Defense Forrestal to basically establish the MJ-12 group, and we've talked about this. Everyone knows about that, right? And then if you look at the actual briefing document, it states here that hold on, let me grab my glasses so I could read it because it's very small type. It says here in that briefing document from 1952, it says a covert analytical effort organized by General Twining and Dr. Vannevar Bush, acting on the direct orders of the president, resulted in a preliminary consensus on 19 September 1947 that the disk was most likely a short-range reconnaissance craft. So basically what the White Hot report is this preliminary consensus that was mentioned in the briefing document to Eisenhower. So that's what I want to talk about today. It's very interesting. Actually, on the page here on the website majesticdocuments.com, it talks about it a little bit before, and then we'll get into the document itself. It says, no one without express permission from the president may disseminate the information contained in this report or communicate it to any unauthorized person not possessing magic security clearance. The White Hot report, and then that was a direct quote right from the White Hot report. And then it says, the White Hot report is a 19-page document dated 19 September 1947 and signed by an appropriate cadre of military leaders on 24 September 1947. Several accounts of individual. Well, we're not going to read their assessment of it. We're going to go right to the document here. That's the interesting stuff. And now some of the document you can't read. It's because it's so it's faded, some of it. But you see some different names on here. It says approved by Harry Truman, and you can see Vannevar Bush's name on there. You can see Nathan Twining's name on there. And anyway, it says here, we're going to go through some of this document, and there's some very interesting information in here. First of all, starts off giving you the warning, hey, this is, this is the only magic employee eyes only could read this thing. And it says, gives you the list of members. Of course, it has Twining amongst other important people in the Pentagon at the time, and some of the contributing members, Robert Oppenheimer, as well as Professor Albert Einstein's names, they're contributing members, so they were brought in on this to give their 2 cents at the time. And then it tells you the story of when the UFOs really start showing up in force. There's actually mention in here of a 1941 incident. That could be the Cape Girardeau, Missouri incident. If this document is true, we don't know. Again, some people believe that it is for a myriad of different reasons, and some people say it's not, that it couldn't be, that it's just some part of an elaborate hoax. But whatever the case, it is some very interesting reading, and we're going to go through some of the more interesting aspects of it. Like right here, you can see this one page I'm looking at right here. It's so you can't even read it because the type actually disappears. It looks like it's faded that bad. But anyway, this is where it gets really interesting. It starts talking about what they determined here. And it says Project White Hot Intelligence Estimate Preliminary, Landing Zone 1. Now, it has a date line here of Socorro, New Mexico, so I'm assuming this group had probably gathered, or maybe the report was written in Socorro, New Mexico. Of course, Socorro County is where White Sands is located, so that probably explains that. But anyway, it says here, the unidentified lenticular-shaped aerodyne, which has been designated ULAT-1 or ULAT-1, has been evaluated as a non-air-breathing aircraft of unknown origin, totally lacking conventional wing, fuselage, nacelle, control, and fuel systems. Strongly indicates it is not Russian. Consultation with Operation Paperclip specialists concur. Aerodynamic features exhibited in ULAT-1 represents a very high degree of engineering and sophistication not seen in this country. Dimensional homogeneity study cannot explain how this craft sustains lead and lift factors necessary for flight. The power plant does not even remotely resemble any conventional type now in use. Lacking any discernible intake or exhaust features, it is the opinion of the Air Materiel Command and the Office of Naval Research that this craft was designed to operate outside of the Earth's atmosphere. The unconventional conclusions reached by members of this fact-finding mission remain tentative at this time. Some members expressed the view that ULAT-1 may be the product of an advanced culture from another planet that is much older than ours and has utilized the science and intellect for interplanetary space travel. It is not precisely known if the occupants purposely had the objective of exploration out of curiosity or with the intent of surveying for other reasons. So far, no hostile action or intent has been observed since they made their presence known. Given the fact that our atomic bomb tests, atmospheric exploration with rockets, and then there's a couple, it looks like about a sentence blacked out here, and blank in New Mexico could have precipitated the events that led to the incident and subsequent actions taken by the military. I just want to stop there for a second. Yeah, there are some portions of this document that are blacked out completely, and you can't read it, unfortunately. And there's one part in particular which I would really love to know what is there. But anyway, well, let's continue here. It says, operating under the assumption that the fallen object was a long-range Russian reconnaissance platform collecting aerial intelligence data, military intelligence personnel were instructed to secure the craft, debris, and occupants as rapidly as possible. Now, some of this is hard to read, like I said, because it's like some of it's like faded out. Concerns over potential exposure to civilians of unknown biological and chemical agents dictates the quarantine measures taken. Radiation hazards are assumed, and appropriate protective measures were taken as well. In the interest of national security priorities, it was necessary to detain civilian witnesses for interrogation to satisfy intelligence requirements and quash rumors that I can't read the next word, blank, alert potential espionage agents known to be in the vicinity. And quash rumors that could alert potential espionage agents known to be in the vicinity. Several bodies were discovered because on-site medical personnel were unsure of the physiological and something makeup of the occupants. Special preparations and preservation methods were employed. Autopsy information obtained so far suggests that the occupants mimicked the features associated with, and it was blacked out, but somebody had written over there, Orientals. Outwardly, they appear human-like, but with one exception. Autopsy notes mention a rarely observed blacked out. There's about almost a sentence worth blacked out here. A rarely observed blank present, which supports the premise that these beings originate from another planet. I'd like to know what that's stated there. A rarely observed what? And then continuing here, and it says Part 2, Technical Evaluation, Preliminary. Upon close examination of the exterior surfaces of the craft's fuselage, metallurgists found the skin to be of a ferrous metal, white in color. The metal exhibits all the characteristics of high-grade, can't read it, high-grade steel. It was determined that the steel was cold-formed and heat-treated. Tensile, can't read the next word, was estimated in excess of 150,000 pounds per square inch. Shear tests give the metal a durability rating above 175,000 pounds per square inch, making this fuselage extremely strong and resistant and heat resistant. Static and pressure flow simulations were impressive. The low profile ratio of 6:1 gives the Aerodyne a great advantage in overcoming the restrictions of the boundary layer effect in high performance operations. Spar flanges are constructed in unusual kinematic design, which is believed to allow strain relief at supersonic speeds. There were no visible signs of plate stiffeners. There were no fasteners, weld, rivets, or fittings holding the fuselage together. Lack of wings, flaps, stabilizers, and surface central features suggests that the craft is a lifting body. There are no air intakes or exhaust. There are no cables. There are no identifiable electronics, wiring, ignition, lights, instrument, compartment, engine, motors, vacuum tubes, solenoids, generators, heaters, etc. The power plant, which was severely damaged, and then it's blacked out here, and it says neutronic engine, and then blacked out again. Blacked out, detected heavy water and deuterous flight hydrogen, elements appearing in the primary igniter. A series of coils and heavy magnets connected to the neutronic engine via an oddly arranged something of electrons, and it's hard to read here. Yeah. Anyway, they're talking about the construction of this craft. We're going to skip forward here because it's very difficult to read a lot of this. It says here there is a small exhaust aperture attached that has what can be only described as a nelicoid mechanism, and then it's blacked out. The auxiliary motor may be articulated, and then it goes on here. It says navigation and engine controls may be activated. Tactile manipulation viewing have been achieved by a form of television imagery. And this is really interesting here, I thought. Symbolic notation appears in the form of flight and control indicators. Flat panels of unknown metal has been suggested as a device associated with the operation of the aerodyne and was discovered and analyzed. Its mode of operation and purpose is unknown. The absence of provisions, berthing compartments, and storage areas suggests the notion that this craft may be a short-range reconnaissance platform. The only recognizable features, and then the next page is all pretty much, you can't read it or it's blacked out. So we're going to have to move forward here. And then it goes on. Mode of operation is believed to be instrumentation and suggests that the aerodyne from reconstruction of available wreckage, blacked out, biosensory and optical stimuli for these reasons. It says absence of indicator lights, absence of any circular dials, absence of linear dials or moving pointers, absence of counters, absence of scopes, no mechanical signal indicator. There were no identifiable control types found among the assortment of artifacts that would indicate the operation of the propulsion unit was manually activated. Knobs, push buttons, toggle switches, levers, balls, and foot pedals were observed in interior space of the flight cabin. None of that stuff they were not observed. It says so. There was nothing in there like that you would find in a craft that was constructed by human beings. The apparent lack of additional clothing and equipment reinforces the belief that the occupants were engaged in a purely exploratory flight. It is not presently known if electromagnetic radiation effects from the power plant had contributed to pilot error or death before impact. If inadequate shielding was the primary cause of pilot error, then it's blacked out, detect it. It is believed by some it's hard to read. It's hard to read this part here. It is believed by some of the crash inspection personnel that sudden decompression and change in atmospheric pressure may have contributed to pilot error. Clothing removed from occupants do not resemble any pressure suits currently being tested by the Army or the Navy for extreme altitude experiments. Let me just stop here for a second. Now, we're pretty far into this right now. And it's so interesting to me because, I mean, even if this was hoaxed, I mean, this would have taken somebody a lot of time and effort to put something like this together. I mean, you would have had to have somebody who's scientifically minded, right, to even think of including this kind of information in a document like this. You would have that. You would have had somebody would have had to dream up this whole situation, and then not only that, but then try to put it onto paper and in a typeface and a font that would match documents from the past. And it's after you start thinking about it, it just starts to become impossible. Anyway, let's continue here. It says, since temperature and humidity factors for the occupants are unknown, it is impossible to determine if decompression and temperature change affected circulatory and dexterity functions. Although it is believed the occupants may have been overcome by some yet to be discovered pollutant or noxious fumes originating inside the craft. The rotation, it's hard to really read some of these paragraphs here. Rotation or assembly basin oscillation could have been a contributing factor in pilot error. It is not known if organic effects played a part either since medical data is non-existent in which to make any judgment or blank to exact cause of death or machine failure. The most probable cause put forward to date of the crash is believed to be excessive acceleration combined with steep descent. The seating arrangement, see again, just all of this stuff that somebody, if this was faked, somebody really has some wild imagination and has a lot of time on their hands to put something like this together. The seating arrangement was transversely designed about the vertical axis of the occupants in a positive direction of flight. The panels removed from the craft resemble the ones taken from the occupants, suggesting a symbiotic relationship between operator and the functions of the aerodyne's operation. a very tentative working theory was expressed by the scientific members of the inspection team that pilot-aerodyne interaction may occur via electronic, non-word symbols perceived through the tactile manipulation of the fingers, feeding impulses to the brain and vice versa, all of which may suggest a non-inert quality of the materials existent as being a product of artificial intelligence. So, this is very interesting. Now, you have to put, if the document is real. Now, it was September 19th, 1947 when it was put together, basically a little over 2 months since the crash of the Roswell craft. So it took this team 2 months to come up with all this, to try to determine how this thing operates, to give the president's a presentation, an update on where they are, and this could be that. This could be this could actually be real. I like to see somebody step forward. If it's not real, it would be nice if somebody would step forward and with the proof to show that it's not real. But this could actually be a real document that we're looking at here. Anyway, it continues to become very interesting here. It says the following elements were analyzed and found to exist in the small neutronic power plant that was found inside ULAP-1. A. UF6 in metallic form. B. Hydrogen fluoride gas. C. Water and uranium tetrafluoride. D. Powdered magnesium and potassium chlorate. E. Metal similar to lead with a chocolate brown color. F. U-235 in metallic form. G. Plastic-like material similar to Ne-102. H. Beryllium. I. Pure aluminum. H. Thorium isotope material. J. Plutonium powder. Again, let's just stop here again for a second. I mean, this isn't, if this was hoaxed, we're talking, I mean, I would have to think that there would have to be multiple people involved at great time and expense to put something like this together, which leads me to believe that it's not fake, that this is an actual real document that the government prepared for President Truman back in September 1947. Anyway, continuing. Scientists from Los Alamos and Sandia Base were alarmed that the power plant could possibly function as a bomb if the elements described above were processed in similar fashion as was done for the lens and shotgun detonators. This originally was the first conclusion. After further evaluation, it was determined that since no recognizable firing circuits were identified, the threat of detonation did not exist. The only evidence of circuitry found on the meter was thin plastic-like sheets fashioned like platters embossed on the exterior of the spherically shaped casing, seated by a thin film of pure silver. Under high-power magnification, it was observed a series of fine grid-like lines intersecting groups of dots arranged in circular patterns. Now, let me just stop here again. Now, this to me seems like this is a report based on things that would happen over a course of a couple of months by a team of many different people and experts and scientists. This is the conclusions that they reached, and that's what it really comes off as. It doesn't come off as something that was put together by someone in their basement. Anyway, continuing here, it says scientific probabilities. Based on all available evidence collected from recovered exhibits currently under study by Air Material Command, a bunch of other groups, MIT, the Office of Naval Research, blah, 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 are deemed extraterrestrial in nature. This conclusion was reached as a result of comparisons of artifacts blacked out discovery in 1941. So are we talking here... the 1941 is the discovery mentioned here, the Cape Girardeau, Missouri crash. Not a lot of witnesses to that, not a lot of information to back that up. But if it could be real, right? That hasn't been proven one way or another. I mean, there was a book written about that. It's been talked about in documentaries. Is the Cape Girardeau case? Is that what they're referencing here? Probably. Continuing here, it says the technology is outside the scope of U.S. science, even that of German rocket and aircraft development. Interplanetary space travel is possible provided adequate funding, necessary resources are made available, and natural interest is piqued. Our solar system is not unique. Chances are favorable for intelligent life on other planets, notwithstanding similar development not unlike our own. Being that our culture is relatively young in relation to the cosmic scale, it is possible that other cultures may have developed faster or are much older and have avoided the pitfalls common in our historical and scientific development. Human origins may not be constrained to one planet. Our genus may be found among solar systems similar to our own. The laws of physics and genetics may have a genesis in a higher structured order than once previously thought. Then this gets into the political considerations, and I find this extremely interesting. Political considerations at that time. And this is all, this report, again, put together by Twining, delivered to Truman, and then Truman on the 24th establishes Operation Majestic 12. Okay, let's see what the political considerations are. It says, 1. Given the existing political climate in the United States and the unstable conditions in Europe, it is the considered opinion of the members that if the administration went public with the information as found in this report now, the results would be damaging, even fatal to the world political structure as it now exists. The following considerations were reviewed and debated, which led the mission to the following opinions. A. Public trust of the political institutions may be eroded and possibly be held in disrepute. Now, let me just stop there for a second. Okay, so this is one of the considerations they're saying, that public trust in political. I'm wondering here now. It's interesting. Now, this is only a mere 2 months after the Roswell incident. They're already concerned. If this talking, they're already concerned that public trust would be eroded for lying for 2 months. I wonder how they feel now. Okay, B, a complete revisioning may take place. And let me just stop here for a second. I want to point out that there are some spelling errors here throughout, but I think that's not. I don't have an issue with that. This was a report. It wasn't meant to be seen. It wasn't something that was it was something that was put together. Looked like somewhat hastily. And I don't think they were concerned about a few spelling errors here and there, because it wasn't expected to be read by a lot of other people. It was only expected to be read by one, the president. So, because it says here, a complete revisioning may take, instead of may, it says make take. Anyway, B, a complete revisioning may take place among institutions of higher learning, thus calling into question the certainty of scientific knowledge. Now think about that. Let's just stop there for a second. There was a concern that people might be thinking, all of a sudden start thinking to themselves, well, why are we even bothering trying to figure this out when look at what these extraterrestrials are able to do? We should start concentrating on this kind of stuff rather than what we're doing. What are we doing? I mean, there was concern that it might actually alter the course of human development. Anyway, C, the ability of the armed forces to secure national security would be put in jeopardy and possibly lead to undue public fear and disorder. Of course, that is a concern. There's no question that they would have been concerned about that. People, the armed forces, how are they going to protect us from an invader from another world that is extremely advanced technologically compared to us? And then D is completely blacked out. I would love to know, this is the part I would love to know what D stated. But we don't know, we can only guess. E, history and religion in the political context would probably suffer the most damage, causing unprecedented upheaval in social and psychological well-being. Well, that's a concern that a lot of people still talk about today. It's going to definitely have some impact, but I don't think we need to worry about that too much at this point. F, political repercussions may occur in our diplomatic efforts of containing the communist threat to our democratic interests. I guess they were concerned that this might have an effect on containing the communists. I don't know how, but that's what they felt. G, if such an announcement were made by the current administration, it could be perceived by opposing party as a trick, laying open to accusations of unethical posturing and manipulation of the public's mind. Boy, nothing really changes, does it, after all these years? Nothing changes. Yeah, Actually, the one thing I would have to say about what's going on today, though, it does seem like both, despite everything else that's going on, it's been bipartisan. There's been a bipartisan effort to try to get to the truth here since last year. That's what it really seems like. But they were concerned that, and you could see it. You could see one political party saying, you know what, Truman was the Democrat. The Republicans back then might have started saying, yeah, they're just lying to us. That could have been that could have been something that might have happened. Who knows? It was definitely, it was something that was brought up in this document. And then it goes on to part 5, national security structure. It says, with the passage of the National Security Act of 1947, and then there's about 3 sentences blacked out, as presented an unprecedented situation with regard to maintaining secrecy related to the information contained in this report. In the early months of 1942 up until the present, intrusions of unidentified aircraft have occasionally been documented, but there has been no serious investigations by the intelligence arm of the government. Even the recovery case of 1941 did not create a unified intelligence effort to exploit possible technological gains, with the exception of the Manhattan Project. So what they're saying here is basically that 1941, which I'm assuming case is the Cape Girardeau crash. They never really tried to reverse engineer the craft that they discovered. Continuing, we now have an opportunity to extend our technology beyond the threshold that we have achieved. Then it's blacked out. Something about, aside from technological gains, we face an even greater challenge, that of learning the intent of such a presence. There are questions that remain unanswered, such as what forces face us, what kind of defense do we have, where do they come from, and what kind of weapons do they possess, where can we stage our forces in advance, then it's blacked out, how wide a front, how many craft can we expect, and blacked out. About a sentence and a half there, blacked out. But before we continue here, I just want to go back to this. Yeah. So you see, this is the main reason. It's always been this reason, I believe. I mean, they wanted to study this. They wanted to try to reverse engineer it. I mean, it's pretty clear in this document. To exploit possible technological gains with the that's what they were trying to do here. That was one of the reasons for the secrecy. So, yeah. It says here, we now have the opportunity to extend our technology beyond the threshold that we have achieved. Yep, exactly. They're still trying to do that. Anyway, continuing here, it says, the members of the mission are prepared to submit a separate report on just this problem alone, and it would take 12 volumes to explain how these problems should be met. Our only point, however, is that a combined intelligence and research operation would be a vast, intricate, covertly planned marshaling of resources, human and material, to solve a specific, clearly defined problem. We have to find effective methods of persuasion with other government agencies without creating a sense of impending doom. The first task is to carefully appraise the problem. The second is to evaluate the known resources and probable strategy of the visitors. The third is to inventory our own ways and means, ascertain how much resources we can bring to bear and how fast. The third is to devise our strategic plan. And last is to work out with infinite pains the tactical details and the myriad secondary problems of funding and security. I think they figured that out, black programs, as we all know. The Pentagon, for the last how many years now, they keep failing their audits. Anyway, continuing, it is the unanimous opinion of the members that Operation Majestic 12 be a fully funded and operational top-secret research and development intelligence gathering agency. It is also recommended that a panel of experts be appointed to chair and oversee the functions and operations of said agency. Its members should have appropriate security clearances and full cooperation. Then it's all blacked out. The National Security Council, the Pentagon, blacked out. Joint Intelligence Committee, Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, Central Intelligence Agency, Atomic Energy Commission, Joint Research and Development Board, Army Security Agency, and the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics. Then it's blacked out again. It says there's a sentence blacked out that ends are highlighted. And it starts talking about propeller-driven bomber aircraft and jet engines armed with conventional and atomic bombs. I mean, I don't know why they're stating this here. I guess they're talking about what they could use to combat these beings. Propeller-driven bomber aircraft, and because it's blacked out, there's nothing, you don't know what they're talking about. Why are these things highlighted? I'm assuming. Propeller-driven bomber aircraft and jet engines armed with conventional and atomic bombs. Jet fighter aircraft, including some type of supersonic speed, armed with rockets and guns. Propeller-driven aircraft valued for their endurance. Guided anti-aircraft missiles and radar-guided anti-aircraft guns. Short and medium-range guided missiles, drone aircraft, atomic charges in bombs, missiles, and torpedoes. In the arena of nuclear weapons, we feel there is a certain advantage to be gained, blacked out. The rest of that sentence, we don't know what it says. It is speculated by some that if reduced size and miniature circuitry were introduced into the proposed hydrogen bomb program, it would give United States strategic air forces a great deterrence capability over the Russians. Current studies at MIT of microelectronics taken from ULAT-1 may give us the strategic advantage so desired. It is strongly recommended that funding be allocated in this area. So let's just stop there. So we're seeing the beginnings of the reverse engineering programs in this document. That's what you're seeing. That's what's being laid out here. It all makes sense. There is a good chance that the Russians may try to make use of the flying saucer scare by public news media and diplomatic means of a technological breakthrough in aircraft and missile development. We feel that such a disclosure would most certainly cause great embarrassment to our elected officials and to the military, not to mention the panic felt by the citizenry. To counter such a threat, it is recommended that a counterintelligence program be drawn up and held in abeyance if at such time the situation should present itself. It might be suggested that we should make a preemptive use of these objects for the purpose of psychological warfare once the true nature of these objects are known and understood. To further assist and aid all MAGCOM in the U.S. and overseas, it is recommended that a standard intelligence reporting system be implemented through standard reporting channels with technical data forwarding instructions. At present, there are no specific intelligence guidelines available to military commanders in dealing with sightings and material evidence collection. It should be advisable for the respective secretaries of the armed forces to devise a security policy of plausible denial if and when the public becomes aware of the reality of these objects and the interest of the military of such incidents. In conclusion, for reasons of national security and the public well-being, the United States must be perceived as being the top of the heap, and every effort must be made to ensure that there is and never has been a threat to this country. So there you go. There was the reasoning put forth by a bunch of top people in the Pentagon, as well as some top advisors, including Robert Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein, that we need to keep this secret and we should start reverse engineering this stuff, and we don't want to upset people, so we're going to keep it a secret. Well, they've been doing it now for what, 76 years, 77 years, 80, almost 80 years. This is where we're still at. I think that this document could be real. Again, when you read something like this, the time and the effort to make something appear like it's real like this, I mean, it becomes impossible almost, right? I mean, why do something like this? What's going to be the reward in the end to go this far with the hoax? It just doesn't make any sense. It would have to take, for one thing, I find it impossible to believe that it will only, if it is a hoax, that only one person would have been behind it. That seems like an impossibility to me, based on some of the scientific arguments that were presented. This seems like this was a group effort by a lot of people, and I just can't see a group getting together and doing something like this, a hoax, and no one ever stepping forward and say, yeah, guess what? I was part of that group that hoaxed this. I just don't see it. But I do see what I have an easier time believing is that this is a real document, and it was put together by Twining and all these other military officials back in 1947, as let Truman know, hey, we need to study this privately. There's a lot of reasons, and here are the reasons. that makes sense to me. And the way it's the format of it fits with the time. This has been investigated by like I talked about earlier, by people like Ryan Wood and his father Robert Wood, among others. And they give this document a high probability of being real on this, based on their research, and I believe them. I think that this document is real, and it says a lot. So that's where I'm at with it. I think it's a fascinating document, and I'll tell you what, I'll leave the link to this website. There's other documents. This is just one of many documents that were leaked over the years of alleged MJ12 documents. And I do think that this one is probably real. I can't. Can I prove that? No. I just a feeling I have after, when you think about it and you put everything into perspective, I think that this document is real. No one's ever stepped forward and said, hey, I pulled this hoax off, and people are still falling for it. Like I said, this would have taken a group of people, determined people, to put this together, to make it look old, to use the same kind of typeface and fonts that they were using back in the 40s. And it just becomes impossible. It just becomes impossible to fake something like this. And some of the things that they talk about here, to me, you can't make some of this stuff up. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for joining me. Until next time.